Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today with a message of great importance, a message that carries the weight of divine destiny. Have you ever found yourself in a season of struggle, feeling as though you're on the edge of something significant, yet you can't quite grasp it? It's in those moments that we must open our eyes to see the signs, for God is speaking to you. There is a preparation underway in your life, a preparation for a major breakthrough. But to see it, you must recognize the signs. The Bible is clear when God is about to move in your life. He often prepares you in ways that seem unexplainable to the world. But if you have the eyes to see, you will witness the miraculous unfolding right before you. Today, I will show you how to identify the signs that God is setting the stage for your breakthrough. And when you recognize them, you will walk in a new understanding of His timing, His ways, and the path He has laid out for you. Unseen battles are often the most profound markers of God's preparation for a breakthrough. In our journey of faith, we may encounter seasons that seem filled with struggle, confusion, and hardship. Yet these times are not signs of God's absence, but rather indicators of His divine hand at work in ways we may not immediately recognize. It's easy to assume that when we face difficulty, we are moving away from God's plan. But in reality, these unseen battles are often the very circumstances God uses to prepare us for the breakthrough that lies ahead. In life, many of us are conditioned to equate ease and comfort with divine favor. We believe that when things are going well, we are blessed, and when things are difficult, we are cursed or abandoned. However, this is not the case in God's kingdom. There are times when God's favor is most evident in the midst of the unseen battles, when everything seems to be falling apart. Yet in truth, He is doing a work that is unseen by the naked eye. These battles, though they may be painful, are often the refining fire that shapes us for the greater purposes God has for us. It's in these moments that our faith is tested and strengthened, and our character is refined, and our reliance on God deepens. One of the key aspects of these unseen battles is that they often happen in the quiet moments, when no one is watching and when no one else can see the struggle you're facing. It may be the internal battle with doubt, fear, or insecurity that no one else knows about. It could be a relationship that seems to be deteriorating, or a situation at work that feels like it's spiraling out of control. These battles are fought in the unseen realms of your heart and mind, and often they are the most difficult to endure because they don't have an immediate external resolution. But in that silence, God is working. In these unseen battles, God is preparing you for something greater. Think about the way a diamond is formed. It's not made in the light, but in the darkness under intense pressure. Similarly, we too are shaped by the unseen pressures of life. These struggles might be difficult to endure, but they mold us into who we are meant to become. If we resist the battle, if we try to escape the discomfort, we may miss the opportunity for growth that is hidden within the struggle. But if we press forward, if we trust God during the fight, He will use these moments to reveal more of His power, His love, and His provision. Sometimes these unseen battles take place in the form of spiritual warfare. You may feel a sense of discouragement or feel as though your prayers are not being answered. You may wonder why things aren't moving, why you are being held back, or why there is a constant struggle. But understand that these are the times when God is preparing you spiritually for what's ahead. The enemy might try to distract you, to weaken your resolve, but it is in these moments of battle that your spiritual muscles are being strengthened. God allows these trials not because He wants you to suffer, but because He is building in you the endurance and resilience you need to withstand the greater challenges that are coming as you step into your breakthrough. Another aspect of unseen battles is that they often come in seasons of quiet. When you don't see immediate results or answers, it's easy to think God has forgotten you. However, God's silence is not a sign of His absence. It is often in the quietest moments that He is doing His deepest work. When the noise of the world fades away, God is preparing your heart to receive the breakthrough. It's in those quiet, unseen moments that He's shaping your character, refining your desires, and preparing you for the blessings He's about to pour out. The key to navigating these unseen battles is to remember that you are not alone. God is with you in every struggle, every moment of doubt, and every wave of discouragement. Even when you cannot see Him working, He is there, quietly orchestrating events of your life for your good. You may not always understand why things are happening the way they are, but trust that God has a purpose. These unseen battles, though difficult, are part of His divine plan to bring you to the place of victory. They are the hidden steps that lead to the open door of breakthrough. If you remain faithful, if you trust Him in the unseen, you will find that God has been working all along, preparing you for something greater than you could have ever imagined. Shifting circumstances are often the clearest sign that God is preparing you for a major breakthrough. When you are in the midst of change, especially when it's unexpected or unsettling, it can feel as though the ground beneath your feet is shifting. The plans you had seemed to be falling apart, doors that once seemed open now appear closed, and everything you thought was certain is now uncertain. These moments of transition can be disorienting and leave you questioning what's happening. But in those moments of change, God is often at work in ways that we cannot see in the moment. Shifting circumstances are the very signs that God is setting you up for a greater purpose. At first glance, changes in your life may seem like setbacks. You might lose a job, experience a relationship breakup, or find yourself in a financial struggle that seems to have no end in sight. These events can leave you feeling lost, but the truth is, God is orchestrating these shifts for a reason. His ways are higher than our ways, and sometimes He has to remove us from one place to prepare us for another. In our limited perspective, we may focus on the immediate discomfort of the shift, but God sees the bigger picture. He knows where He is taking you and how these changes are necessary to get you there. The Bible tells us that God's plans are not our plans, and His timing is not our timing. It's easy to want everything to stay the same, to want things to feel stable and secure, but it is often in the midst of upheaval that God does His best work. When things are comfortable, we may become complacent and stop growing. But when circumstances change, when we are forced out of our comfort zones, we are stretched and refined. This is when growth happens, when we learn to depend on God in ways we never had to before. When God is preparing you for a breakthrough, He often causes a shift in your circumstances to get your attention and to move you into a position where you can receive what He is about to give. These shifts may take the form of a change in your career, a move to a new city, or a shift in your relationships. The key is to recognize that change, no matter how difficult it may seem, is often the very mechanism that God uses to set you up for something greater. Consider the story of Abraham in the Bible. God called him to leave his home, his family, and everything familiar to him to go to a land that God would show him. Abraham had to leave behind his comfortable life and step into the unknown. The shifting of Abraham's circumstances, his call to leave everything behind, was not a punishment, but a divine invitation to a higher calling. That call led to the fulfillment of God's promise to make him the father of many nations. Had Abraham resisted the change, he would have missed the breakthrough that God had prepared for him. But he trusted God, and that trust led to a life far greater than he could have ever imagined. Shifting circumstances can also be a sign that God is preparing you for a new level of influence and responsibility. Just as God changed Joseph's circumstances from being a slave to becoming the second in command of Egypt, He may be positioning you for something bigger than you can currently see. Joseph's journey was filled with trials and heartache, but each shift in his circumstances was a step closer to the fulfillment of God's purpose in his life. Sometimes when we experience setbacks, we may not realize that God is positioning us for a promotion. The very things that seem to be setbacks are often the groundwork for our success. When your circumstances begin to change, it is also important to evaluate your response. Do you embrace the shift or do you resist it? Sometimes God allows us to go through difficult circumstances because He knows that it's exactly what we need to prepare for what's ahead. Our response to shifting circumstances is critical. If we remain faithful during the shift, if we trust that God is in control, even when we can't see the end result, then we will be ready to walk into the breakthrough He has in store for us. Shifting circumstances can also force us to reevaluate our priorities. When things are in flux, we often become more aware of what truly matters in life. What we once thought was important may lose its significance, and we may be forced to focus on what is truly essential. This process of realignment is often part of God's preparation for our breakthrough. He uses shifts in our circumstances to bring us back to what is truly important, to refocus our attention on His will and His purposes for our lives. Finally, shifting circumstances teach us to lean on God's guidance. In times of change, we must rely on His wisdom and direction to navigate the unknown. God promises to guide us through every season of our lives, especially the ones that feel uncertain. It's in these moments of transition that we learn to trust Him more deeply and to follow His lead without knowing exactly where He is taking us. The shifting of our circumstances becomes an opportunity for us to grow in our faith, to deepen our relationship with God, and to step into the future He has prepared for us. Increased resistance is one of the most telling signs that God is preparing you for a major breakthrough. When you find yourself facing intense opposition, whether from people, circumstances, or even within yourself, it often signals that something significant is on the horizon. Resistance can manifest in various forms. You may encounter people who criticize or doubt you, situations that seem to thwart your progress, or internal struggles with fear, insecurity, and doubt. While it may feel discouraging in the moment, this increased resistance is not a sign that God has abandoned you. Rather, it is a sign that you are being prepared for something greater. Throughout the Bible, resistance was a constant companion for those who were called to do great things for God. Take, for example, the story of the Israelites in the wilderness. God had promised them a land flowing with milk and honey, yet their journey was filled with constant resistance from Pharaoh's army, to hunger, to the very disobedience of the people themselves. Despite all of this, God used the resistance to refine the Israelites, to teach them dependence on Him, and to prepare them to receive the promise He had for them. The opposition they faced did not disqualify them. It was part of the process of preparing them for what God had promised. In the same way, when you face increased resistance in your own life, it may very well be that God is preparing you for the breakthrough you've been praying for. Resistance often arises when you are on the verge of a significant step in your spiritual journey or your personal life. The enemy knows that if you break through the resistance, you will step into a new level of blessing, favor, and purpose. And so his tactic is to try to keep you from moving forward by intensifying opposition. This can be especially true when you are about to make a bold move of faith or take a step of obedience to God's calling. When you sense that something significant is about to happen but find yourself encountering more obstacles than ever, know that this increased resistance is a sign that you are on the right path. The Apostle Paul experienced this kind of resistance throughout his ministry. Time and again, he faced physical danger, emotional strain, and persecution, yet he never allowed these obstacles to deter him from his mission. In 1 Corinthians 16:9, Paul writes, "For a great door and effectual is opened unto me, and there are many adversaries." Paul understood that the presence of adversaries was an indicator that God was opening a door for him. When resistance comes against you, it's important to recognize that it's often a sign of something good on the other side. The enemy doesn't waste his energy fighting against people who are not a threat. The more intense the opposition, the greater the breakthrough that is coming. It is also crucial to understand that resistance is not always external. Sometimes the greatest resistance comes from within. You may feel overwhelmed by self-doubt, fear of failure, or uncertainty about your own worthiness. These internal battles can be just as intense, if not more so, than the external obstacles you face. The enemy uses these internal struggles to keep you from stepping into your full potential. However, it is through overcoming these internal battles that you are prepared to handle the external challenges that will come with your breakthrough. If you can persevere through the self-doubt, the fear, and the uncertainty, you will find that the resistance becomes less powerful, and you will emerge stronger and more equipped to fulfill the purpose that God has for you. The key to overcoming increased resistance is to remain steadfast in your faith and your trust in God. The Apostle James tells us to count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. James 1:2-3. Resistance has a refining purpose. It is through the fire of opposition that your character is developed, your faith is strengthened, and your endurance is built. Every time you face resistance and choose to stand firm, you are growing in ways that you cannot fully understand in the moment. God uses these challenges to prepare you for the greater work He is calling you to, and the resistance you face is not a reflection of your inadequacy, but rather a sign of your preparation. Moreover, resistance often strengthens your reliance on God. When things are easy, it is easy to forget how much you need God. But when the opposition is great, you are forced to turn to Him for strength and wisdom and direction. It is in these moments of resistance that you develop a deeper trust in God's faithfulness and His ability to bring you through to the other side. Your faith grows not just through times of ease, but through times of struggle. And as your faith grows, so does your ability to handle the blessings that God is about to pour out on your life. While the experience of increased resistance can be overwhelming, it is important to remember that the breakthrough is often closest when the opposition is the fiercest. The closer you are to your breakthrough, the harder the enemy will try to keep you from it. This resistance is not meant to stop you, but to prepare you for what is coming. Keep pressing forward, knowing that God is using this time to mold you, refine you, and strengthen you for the victory that is just ahead. When the battle is the toughest, it's often a sign that the victory is within reach. Keep your eyes on God, hold fast to your faith, and trust that He is using this resistance to prepare you for the breakthrough that will transform your life. A desire for more is often one of the clearest signs that God is preparing you for a major breakthrough. This deep longing, this feeling that something is missing, or that there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing, is not a sign of discontentment, but rather an indication that God is stirring something within you. It's easy to mistake this desire for more as a selfish or materialistic craving, but in reality, it can be a divine discontentment that leads you to pursue the fullness of God's calling and purpose for your life. The Bible teaches us that God has placed eternity in our hearts, a deep and unquenchable longing for something greater than what this world offers. This desire for more is not merely a desire for more things or experiences, but for more of God, more of His presence, more of His power, and more of His purpose. It's a hunger that cannot be satisfied by earthly possessions or accomplishments. The world may tell you that once you have achieved a certain level of success, once you have acquired the things that everyone else desires, you will be fulfilled. But the truth is, the deeper longing in your heart is meant to point you to something greater, something that only God can fulfill. When you feel a stirring in your heart, a desire for more, it is often a sign that God is preparing you for the next step in your journey. This desire is not accidental. It is God working in you, creating a hunger for the life He has planned for you. He is calling you to step beyond the boundaries of your current circumstances and embrace the abundant life He has promised. The Israelites experienced a similar longing when they were in the wilderness, yearning for the promised land that God had prepared for them. That desire for more was a call to faith, a call to trust God for the fulfillment of His promises. This desire for more may manifest in different ways for different people. For some, it may be a desire for greater purpose, for a life that is more meaningful and impactful. For others, it may be a desire for deeper intimacy with God, to know Him more fully, and to experience His presence in a way that transforms their lives. Still, for others, it may be a desire for breakthroughs in their personal or professional lives, for healing, for restoration, or for new opportunities. Whatever form it takes, the underlying truth is the same. God is at work in you, preparing you for something greater than you can currently see. This desire for more often comes with a sense of frustration. You may feel that what you are experiencing now is not enough, that there is something more that you are meant to do, or that you are meant to be somewhere other than where you are. This frustration is not a sign that you are ungrateful or that you are not content with what you have. Instead, it is a sign that God is calling you to go deeper, to press forward, and to step into the greater things He has prepared for you. The Apostle Paul expresses this longing in Philippians 3:12-14 when he says, "Not that I have already obtained all this or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me." Paul understood that there was more to be gained in his walk with Christ, and he pursued it with passion and purpose. This desire for more often comes at a time when you are ready to receive it. God knows the timing of your breakthrough better than you do. He knows when you are spiritually, emotionally, and physically prepared to handle what He is about to release into your life. If you are experiencing a desire for more, it is a sign that God is preparing your heart and your mind for the breakthrough that is coming. He is expanding your capacity to receive the blessings He is about to pour out. But before that breakthrough comes, He may require you to do some preparation work, to let go of old mindsets, to surrender your will to His, and to deepen your trust in His timing. It's important to note that the desire for more should not be pursued in ways that are contrary to God's will. This desire should be shaped by a heart that seeks to honor God and fulfill His purposes. Sometimes we may be tempted to satisfy our desire for more by pursuing things that are not aligned with God's best for us. We may chase after worldly success, possessions, or relationships in an attempt to fill the emptiness we feel. However, true fulfillment comes only when our desires are aligned with God's will and His plan for our lives. When we seek God first, He promises to fulfill our desires according to His perfect will, Psalm 37:4. As you feel the stirring within you as the desire for more grows stronger, take it as a sign that God is about to do something significant in your life. He is preparing you for a breakthrough that will not only fulfill your deepest desires, but also position you to be a vessel through which His glory can be revealed. This desire for more is a gift from God, a divine calling to press forward, to trust Him more deeply, and to step into the abundant life He has promised. Keep your eyes on Him. Stay faithful to His leading, and watch as He brings to pass the desires of your heart in ways that far exceed what you can imagine. God's timing is often one of the most crucial signs that He is preparing you for a major breakthrough. In moments when things seem delayed or when opportunities feel out of reach, it can be difficult to understand why you aren't seeing the results of your prayers and efforts immediately. However, God's timing is never accidental and it is never wrong. Often the delays and waiting periods that we experience are the result of God's perfect timing, which works behind the scenes to bring about the breakthrough He has in store for us. Throughout Scripture, we see that God operates on a timeline far different from our own. He is not bound by the constraints of time in the way we are. We tend to want things to happen immediately or within a certain time frame, but God knows that certain events need to unfold in a specific order for His plan to be fully realized. When things seem delayed or when we are forced to wait, it is often because God is orchestrating a much larger picture. His timing is always right, even when it doesn't feel that way in the moment. Consider the story of Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a child, yet they waited many years before His promise was fulfilled. In fact, they waited so long that they took matters into their own hands, trying to make God's promise come to fruition by their own strength. But God's plan and timing were far greater than their own. The fulfillment of the promise came at a time when it seemed impossible, and it was only then that they could truly see the magnitude of God's faithfulness. Had God given them the child any earlier, they might not have been able to fully appreciate the miracle that God had worked in their lives. God's timing was perfect. In your own life, when you find yourself in a season of waiting, it is important to trust that God is at work, even when you can't see it. Delays can be frustrating, and the waiting process can test your patience, but during this time, God is often preparing you in ways that you might not immediately understand. Waiting can shape your character, deepen your faith, and increase your dependence on Him. While it may seem like nothing is happening, God is often refining your heart and preparing the environment around you so that when the breakthrough does come, you will be ready to handle it. One of the reasons God's timing can seem delayed is because He knows that the breakthrough must come at just the right moment. Sometimes we think we are ready for what God has in store for us, but in reality, He may be waiting for certain things to fall into place. This may include timing with other people's circumstances or the development of certain qualities within ourselves. If we receive the breakthrough too early, we might not have the maturity or understanding to appreciate it, and we may even squander it. But God, in His wisdom, knows exactly when we are ready to step into the fullness of His promises. God's timing is a sign of His love for us. Sometimes the delays we experience are designed to protect us. God, in His infinite wisdom, knows that we may not be ready for the breakthrough we desire, and His delays are acts of love and protection. He knows that if He were to grant us our desires prematurely, it might lead to harm or disappointment. The waiting period is not a sign of God's neglect or indifference. Rather, it is a sign of His perfect love for us. Just as a parent delays giving a child something for their own good, God delays breakthroughs because He knows what is best for us. Another important aspect of God's timing is that it teaches us to trust in Him more fully. When things aren't happening according to our plans, it forces us to lean on God in deeper ways. We are reminded that we cannot control the timing of our lives, but we can trust in God's ability to work everything together for our good. This trust, developed in the waiting season, strengthens our faith and makes us more resilient when challenges arise. It teaches us to rely on His guidance, to follow His lead, and to rest in the knowledge that He is in control. God's perfect timing also includes the waiting periods that seem to have no end. During these times, He is often preparing not just us, but the world around us. We may want things to happen on our schedule, but God is working behind the scenes to arrange the circumstances, the people, and the opportunities in place. These behind-the-scenes activities are as important as the waiting process itself. God's timing is never just about us, it's also about the people and situations that He is aligning for our breakthrough. It's easy to become discouraged during seasons of delay, to question why things are not progressing, and to wonder if God has forgotten about us. But it is important to remember that the delay is not a denial. God is working on our behalf, even when we cannot see it. His timing is always purposeful. And when the moment for your breakthrough finally arrives, you will be able to look back and see how perfectly He orchestrated everything. The breakthrough may be just around the corner, and God is preparing you for it, ensuring that when it arrives, it will be everything you've prayed for and more. Trust in God's timing, knowing that it is always perfect and that He is preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. A deep sense of peace amidst uncertainty is one of the most profound signs that God is preparing you for a major breakthrough. It may seem paradoxical, especially when you're facing challenges, unfamiliar situations, or times of great transition, but this peace is not something that can be manufactured by human effort. It is a divine peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that anchors your heart and mind even when the circumstances around you are anything but peaceful. This peace is often the result of God's presence in your life, a clear indication that He is at work, guiding you toward the breakthrough that He has promised. When you are in a season of preparation for something greater, God will often provide you with a supernatural peace that doesn't necessarily make sense given the circumstances. For instance, you may be in the middle of a job transition, a relationship shift, or a personal challenge, and yet, instead of being consumed by fear or anxiety, you find yourself with a surprising sense of calm. This peace is a reminder that God is in control and that you can trust Him to lead you through the storm. It is a peace that is not based on the absence of difficulty, but rather it comes from knowing that God is with you through every step of the process. This peace amidst uncertainty is not the absence of conflict or the cessation of struggles. In fact, it often comes at a time when things seem to be falling apart around you. You may feel uncertain about the future, unsure about your next steps, and overwhelmed by the unknown. But despite all of that, there is a deep sense of assurance that God is leading you. You may not know how the situation will resolve, but you know that you don't have to figure it all out on your own. This peace is a reminder that God has gone before you, preparing the way for your breakthrough, and that He is trustworthy. There are countless stories throughout Scripture of individuals who experienced peace in the midst of uncertainty as they waited for God's intervention. One of the most powerful examples is the story of the Israelites in the wilderness. After leaving Egypt, they found themselves in an unfamiliar and uncertain place, wandering through the desert with no clear idea of when they would reach the promised land. Despite their fears and frustrations, God provided them with a peace that enabled them to continue on their journey. This peace was a result of God's presence with them, and even though they didn't always understand His timing or plan, they learned to trust in His provision. Similarly, in our own lives, when we face uncertainty, we can experience this same peace as we rely on God's presence and trust in His plan for us. Another example is the Apostle Paul. Throughout his ministry, Paul faced imprisonment, persecution, and many other trials. Yet, despite these external hardships, Paul experienced an inner peace that kept him grounded and focused on his mission. In Philippians 4:7, Paul writes, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Paul understood that this peace came directly from God and that it was a sign that God was in control, even in the midst of the chaos around him. This peace was not based on favorable circumstances, but on the assurance that God was faithful and would bring about His purposes. When you experience peace in the middle of uncertainty, it serves as a confirmation that God is preparing you for something greater. It is an indication that He is working behind the scenes, even when you can't see it. This peace acts as a shield against fear and doubt, helping you to maintain your focus on God rather than on the circumstances. It allows you to move forward step by step, trusting that God is guiding your every move. You may not know exactly what the future holds, but you can rest assured that God is already there, making a way for you. This peace is not a sign of complacency or a lack of action. It doesn't mean that you sit back and do nothing while waiting for the breakthrough to come. Instead, it is a peace that empowers you to act in faith, even when you don't have all the answers. It gives you the courage to make decisions and take steps forward, knowing that you are not alone. You can move forward with confidence even in the face of uncertainty because God's peace is guiding you every step of the way. In many ways, this peace is a gift from God, one that strengthens your faith and helps you navigate the challenges of life. It is a reminder that God is present, that He is faithful, and that He will never leave you or forsake you. This peace is a powerful tool that enables you to stay grounded when everything around you is shifting. It allows you to hold on to the promises of God, even when the circumstances seem to contradict those promises. It is a peace that anchors your soul and gives you the strength to endure, knowing that God is working all things together for your good. As you experience this peace amidst uncertainty, take it as a sign that God is preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. This peace is not just a temporary feeling. It is a reflection of God's presence and His work in your life. It is a sign that He is leading you toward a breakthrough and that He will guide you every step of the way. Trust in this peace, lean into it, and let it carry you through the unknown.